Portugal may have lost only 1-0, but the scoreline barely tells the real story. The winning goal came in stoppage time from Mikel Merino. Yet the player who dominated the conversation wasn't the scorer. And it wasn't even Cristiano Ronaldo. Instead, it was a goalkeeper wearing the losing team's shirt, a midfielder who barely misplaced a pass, and a rating that will divide football fans for years. How does a goalkeeper produce one of the performances of the tournament and still walk away eliminated? Why did the official man of the match go to Rodri when Merino scored the winner? And perhaps the biggest question of all, was Cristiano Ronaldo's lowest rating actually deserved? By the end of this video, every important performance will be explained. Every controversial rating will be put into context and will answer who truly decided one of the most tactical battles of this World Cup. Spain reached the quarterfinals with a dramatic 1-0 victory over Portugal. But this was never a match of constant attacking football. It was 90 minutes of patience, structure, discipline, and tiny margins. Spain controlled possession almost from the opening whistle. Rodri sat at the base of midfield, dictating the rhythm, while Pedri and Dani Olmo constantly searched for gaps between Portugal's defensive lines. Portugal, meanwhile, accepted life without the ball. Roberto Martinez set his side up to defend compactly before breaking quickly whenever Bruno Fernandes, Juan Felix, or Cristiano Ronaldo could find space. For long stretches, the plan worked. Portugal frustrated Spain. Diogo Costa repeatedly denied Lamine Yamal, Alex Baena, and Dani Olmo with outstanding saves. Rúben Dias led the defensive line superbly, while Portugal looked increasingly comfortable dragging the match toward extra time. But football at this level rarely rewards 90 minutes of concentration if there is one lapse. Deep into stoppage time, Spain restarted play quickly from a free kick. Portugal switched off for only a few seconds. Ferran Torres found space on the right, delivered a perfectly weighted pass across the box, and substitute Mikel Merino arrived completely unmarked to finish first time. One attack, one mistake, one goal. Portugal had one final opportunity from a late free kick, but Bernardo Silva's header drifted narrowly over the crossbar. Moments later, the final whistle confirmed Spain's place in the last eight, while Cristiano Ronaldo left the World Cup in tears. But that still wasn't the biggest surprise, because when the ratings arrived, they told a much deeper story. The S tier belongs to players who fundamentally changed how this match unfolded. Sometimes that means scoring the winning goal. Sometimes it means preventing the game from ending long before the decisive moment. This time, both happened. Now let's begin with Diogo Costa. An 8.3 rating in a defeat might seem unusual. But once you look beyond the final score, it becomes almost impossible to argue against. Within the opening 20 minutes alone, Costa produced one of the finest sequences of goalkeeping seen in this tournament. He first denied Lamine Yamal's curling effort before instantly recovering to block Alex Baena's rebound from close range. 2 saves within seconds. Both required exceptional reactions. Later, he denied Pau Cubarsí from point-blank range following a dangerous set piece. Throughout the evening, his positioning remained calm, his handling secure, and his decision-making under relentless pressure rarely faltered. Goalkeepers often receive praise after spectacular saves, but Costa's biggest contribution came from something less obvious. He gave Portugal belief. Every stop reinforced the confidence of the defenders in front of him. Every save bought another 5 or 10 minutes for Portugal's game plan to survive. Without that confidence, Spain might have found an early breakthrough and turned this into a completely different contest. Costa could do nothing about Merino's winner. By the time the finish arrived, Spain had created an uncontested chance, only a few meters from goal after Portugal completely lost their defensive shape. No goalkeeper consistently saves those situations. That is why his rating remains firmly in S tier despite ending on the losing side. And here comes the first major reversal of this entire ratings board. The best Portuguese player wasn't Bruno Fernandes. It wasn't Bernardo Silva. It wasn't Cristiano Ronaldo. It was their goalkeeper. That alone tells you everything about how this match unfolded. But even Costa wasn't the highest rated player on the pitch. That honor belonged to Mikel Merino. At first glance, some viewers may question an 8.7 for a player who spent most of the evening on the bench. Until they remember what elite substitutes are actually judged on, Merino wasn't introduced to dominate possession for 90 minutes. He entered with one specific mission: attack tiring defenders, exploit spaces that had finally started to appear, be decisive. He accomplished every one of those objectives. His movement before the winning goal was exceptional. Rather than attacking the first space, he delayed his run by a fraction of a second, allowing Portugal's center backs to focus on Ferran Torres. By the time they reacted, Merino had already arrived behind them. One touch, one finish. One World Cup dream ended. Substitutes are often remembered only for scoring. Merino deserves credit because he understood exactly where the space would appear before anyone else did. That's football intelligence, not luck. Yet even after discussing both S-tier performances, another debate refuses to disappear. Was the scorer really Spain's most influential player? Or did someone else quietly control the entire match long before the winning goal ever arrived? That answer begins in midfield. The obvious headline belongs to Mikel Merino. The hidden story belongs to Rodri. That may sound strange when the midfielder never found the net himself, but football matches are not always won by the player who delivers the final touch. Sometimes they are won by the player who quietly controls everything that happens before it. Rodri earns an A-tier rating, and there's a strong argument that he was Spain's true engine throughout the night. Portugal wanted to attack through the middle whenever Bruno Fernandes or Vitinha managed to receive between the lines. Rodri simply refused to let that happen. His positioning constantly blocked passing lanes before Portugal could even build momentum. Whenever Portugal recovered possession, Rodri was already waiting. He wasn't chasing the game. He was predicting it. That anticipation forced Portugal wider and wider until crosses became their safest option instead of central combinations. Spain were happy with that trade because Pau Cubarsí and Aymeric Laporte dealt comfortably with most deliveries into the box. Rodri's influence became even greater as fatigue began to appear. While Portugal's midfield covered more ground, Rodri covered more space with fewer movements. Every pass seemed to slow Portugal's transitions while allowing Spain to recycle possession once again. Then came the decisive sequence. Rodri intelligently shielded the ball under pressure, drawing the foul that allowed Spain to restart quickly. Within seconds, Portugal had switched off. Ferran Torres attacked the right side, and Merino finished the move. Rodri doesn't receive an assist. He doesn't receive the goal. But without his composure, that entire sequence never exists. This is exactly why raw statistics rarely tell the complete story. Sometimes influence is invisible. Alongside Rodri sits Dani Olmo, another player whose creativity deserved far more attention than the final score suggests. Spain struggled to create clear openings against Portugal's disciplined defensive block, yet whenever danger appeared, Olmo was usually involved. Inside the opening 10 minutes, he released Mikel Oyarzabal with an outstanding through ball that should probably have produced the first goal. Minutes later, he unlocked Portugal's defense again, forcing Diogo Costa into another intervention. Throughout the match, he drifted intelligently between Portugal's midfield and defensive lines, constantly asking difficult questions of João Neves and Vitinha. His movement also created space for Pedri to arrive from deeper positions, preventing Portugal from simply marking one playmaker out of the game. Olmo wasn't spectacular every minute. He didn't need to be. His value came from repeatedly stretching Portugal's defensive shape until the breakthrough finally arrived. That's the difference between a highlight player and a controlling player. Olmo belongs firmly in the second category. Portugal's highest outfield performer was Rúben Dias. And considering how much pressure Spain applied, that should not be overlooked. Center backs often receive attention only after mistakes, yet Dias spent almost the entire evening preventing dangerous situations before they fully developed. His positioning inside the penalty area was excellent. He won key aerial duels. He blocked passing lanes toward Oyarzabal. He organized Portugal's defensive line whenever Spain attempted quick combinations around the edge of the box. Most importantly, he stayed calm. Even when Spain controlled possession for long periods, Dias resisted the temptation to abandon his position and chase the ball. That discipline allowed Portugal to remain compact for almost 90 minutes. His most memorable contribution came with a crucial defensive intervention that denied what looked like a certain scoring opportunity late in the match. Without that recovery, Merino's winner might never have been necessary. But football is ruthless. A defender can perform brilliantly for 89 minutes. One breakdown elsewhere is enough for the entire defensive effort to be forgotten. Dias deserves far more credit than the final result suggests. But not every solid performance deserves a tier. Some players quietly held the structure together without ever becoming the central story. And this is where the ratings become much more interesting. Because B tier isn't about average football. It's about players who performed important jobs while someone else stole the spotlight. Take Lamine Yamal. Many viewers expected another spectacular performance from Spain's teenage superstar. Instead, Portugal made life incredibly difficult. Every time Yamal isolated his defender, another Portuguese shirt arrived almost immediately to double up. Space disappeared quickly, forcing him into earlier passes or more ambitious shots. Yet despite those limitations, he still produced several dangerous moments, including the curling effort that forced Diogo Costa into perhaps the save of the night. He never dominated, but he never disappeared either. That is exactly what a balanced B-tier performance looks like. Nuno Mendes also deserves recognition, despite his evening ending earlier than expected. Before his injury, Portugal's left side remained their most reliable outlet. His overlapping runs gave João Felix support, while his recovery pace prevented Pedro Porro from joining every Spanish attack. Once Mendes left the pitch, everything changed. Spain immediately increased the pressure down Portugal's right-hand side. Without Mendes balancing the opposite flank, Portugal gradually lost the ability to escape Spain's press through wide areas. Sometimes a player's biggest contribution becomes obvious only after he leaves the pitch. That was certainly true here. João Felix produced flashes that reminded everyone why Portugal trusted him with the starting role. His ability to receive under pressure and carry the ball forward relieved pressure during difficult moments. He also created Portugal's best attacking opportunity for Cristiano Ronaldo. The execution, however, never arrived. Felix did enough to influence the match. He simply couldn't provide the decisive action Portugal desperately needed. Bruno Fernandes experienced a similarly frustrating evening. His work rate remained outstanding. He pressed aggressively, recovered possession, linked midfield to attack whenever possible. But Spain's midfield prevented him from dictating the tempo for sustained periods. Instead of becoming Portugal's conductor, Bruno spent most of the night reacting to Spain's rhythm. Sometimes even elite midfielders can only minimize damage rather than seize control. And that was Bruno's role here. And it explains why his performance settles comfortably in B tier rather than climbing any higher. Yet the biggest discussion of the entire ratings board still hasn't arrived, because one legendary name sits alone in D tier. And whether fans agree or disagree, the evidence behind that rating deserves a closer look. Now we arrive at the most controversial section of the entire ratings board. Cristiano Ronaldo. Whenever a player of his stature finishes a World Cup knockout match with the lowest rating on the pitch, debate is inevitable. Some supporters will argue that Portugal simply failed to supply him. Others will point to his age. Others will focus only on the final score. But ratings are not built on reputation. They are built on impact, and this performance simply didn't have enough of it. Ronaldo actually began brightly. Inside the opening minutes, he tested Unai Simon from a difficult angle before forcing another save after Bruno Fernandes won possession high up the pitch. Those moments suggested Portugal's captain could still produce the decisive contribution his country needed. But they quickly became isolated moments rather than the beginning of sustained influence. As Spain tightened control of midfield, Ronaldo became increasingly disconnected from the game. He received fewer touches inside dangerous areas. His movement became easier for Pau Cubarsí and Aymeric Laporte to anticipate. Portugal's counterattacks often ended before he could become involved. Then came the opportunity everyone remembers. Late in the match, João Felix delivered exactly the kind of service elite strikers dream about. Ronaldo found himself in a dangerous position with the chance to change Portugal's tournament. The finish never came. At this level, knockout football is brutally unforgiving. One missed opportunity can outweigh 40 quiet minutes. That is exactly why LiveScore and DAZN judged his performance far more harshly than some automated rating systems. This isn't about blaming Ronaldo for Portugal's elimination. Far from it. Portugal defended magnificently for most of the evening. And the winning goal arrived because of a collective lapse rather than one individual mistake. But when judging an individual performance, expectations matter. Ronaldo has built his career on deciding matches exactly like this one. On this occasion, he couldn't. That is why the lowest rating feels uncomfortable, but it also feels understandable. Mikel Oyarzabal falls into C tier for a very different reason. Unlike Ronaldo, Oyarzabal constantly found intelligent positions behind Portugal's defensive line. His movement was excellent. His timing was excellent. His finishing was not. Inside the opening stages, Dani Olmo delivered a superb through ball that split Portugal's defense apart. Oyarzabal found himself one-on-one with Diogo Costa. He missed. Later, he failed to convert another promising situation that should have increased Spain's advantage long before stoppage time. Fortunately for Spain, Luis de la Fuente possessed something Portugal could not match: elite depth. When Oyarzabal left the field, Mikel Merino entered. Within minutes, Spain had their winner. Sometimes substitutions don't simply refresh a team. They completely rewrite the match. This is where the entire ratings board begins to make sense. The scoreline suggests Spain escaped with a narrow victory. The ratings tell a different story. Spain controlled almost every important phase. Portugal survived because Diogo Costa produced an extraordinary goalkeeping performance and because Rúben Dias organized an exceptional defensive display. Eventually, however, constant pressure forced one final mistake. The scoreboard only records one goal. The ratings reveal 90 minutes of gradual control. And that brings us back to the biggest debate of all. Who is the real MVP? Many fans will immediately choose Merino. After all, football remembers goals, especially winners scored in stoppage time. Without Merino, Spain probably don't reach the quarterfinals. That argument is completely fair. But another case deserves equal attention. Rodri influenced almost every important tactical battle before Merino even entered the match. He dictated possession. He prevented Portugal from progressing through midfield. He protected Spain's defenders. He controlled the tempo whenever Portugal threatened to build momentum. Most importantly, he remained mentally sharp deep into stoppage time, winning the foul that allowed Spain to execute the quick restart, leading directly to the winning goal. Merino delivered the final sentence. Rodri wrote the entire chapter. That's why the official man of the match remains defensible, even though another player scored the decisive goal. Sometimes football's best player isn't the one who produces the loudest moment. Sometimes it's the player who quietly controls everything around it. The biggest surprise, however, belongs elsewhere. Portugal's best player wasn't an attacker. It wasn't Bruno Fernandes. It wasn't Bernardo Silva. And it certainly wasn't Cristiano Ronaldo. It was Diogo Costa. A goalkeeper on the losing side produced one of the finest individual displays of the knockout stage. And without him, this match might have been finished before halftime. That reversal changes how we should remember this game. Not as a comfortable Spanish victory, but as 90 minutes of resistance finally broken by one perfectly executed moment. In the end, Spain earned their place in the quarterfinals because their structure never disappeared, even when chances were missed, even when Diogo Costa seemed unbeatable, even when frustration began to grow. Their patience held. Their midfield remained in control. Their substitutes changed the match. Portugal leave the tournament with pride after one of their strongest defensive performances, but also with painful questions. Can they continue relying on moments instead of sustained attacking control? And as one legendary international career reaches what appears to be its final World Cup chapter, another generation must now step forward. The ratings capture that transition perfectly. One goalkeeper earned admiration in defeat. One substitute became the hero. One midfielder reminded everyone that football can still be controlled without dominating the headlines. And perhaps the harshest lesson of all is this. At the highest level, 90 perfect minutes can still be undone by 6 unforgettable seconds.